Gracious Woman podcast. Marriage is a lifetime commitment to God and not to the person. Here, we encourage each other to be married to the vision of the women that God wants us to be, and whatever He does is besides the point. I'm Minister Patience, your host, and today we will be talking about our careers and navigating those careers within our marriage. So, what do you do? What do you do for a living? Are you an accountant? Are you a businesswoman? Are you a doctor, a nurse? Whatever the case is, what do you do? Because what you do impacts the kind of marriage that we're going to have. So working as a woman is a good thing, but we have to balance what we do with the marriage life. We have to balance what we do with the home life. So for example, I am a hairdresser by trade, and hairdressers spend a lot of time on their knees, and we work a lot of long hours. Saturdays especially are like a big deal because this is where most women are not working. This is when they're off. So this is when they want to get their hair done. Evenings are also a popular time, within the salon. So early on, when I was building my business, it was very difficult for me to balance my time, my career, and my marriage. Because I wanted to be present in my business. I wanted to make sure I was managing my staff properly. So I really encountered a lot of issues in regards to time management. So right there is the first thing I would like us to discuss. What is your time management like with your career? Does it conflict with the normal responsibilities that we have as wives, as mothers, right? So my long hours conflicted a lot with my younger children because they were in daycare at that time and I needed to get them from daycare. So 5 o'clock was the cutoff time for work for me. I had to make sure that I was leaving so that, by 6 o'clock the latest, I can pick them up. So after a while of doing this, a couple of, years in, I started feeling as though my children were spending too much time in daycare, right? So this is when I started cutting my hours back. I had to hire staff. I had to, get a manager and this and that. Now, while that move was good for my home life, for my marriage, because as I'm there for my parents, I'm there for my husband too. So while that was absolutely perfect for my marriage, it presented a lot of challenges within my business, right? So I found a lot of conflict within that time management space. Another thing too, I realized is that my in-laws and my parents, they didn't quite understand my grind, why I wanted to put in these hours of work. And so there also started to be a conflict in my relationships with my parents and with my in-laws and with my friends and stuff like that, because they just thought, right, I was just after the money. Now, in my defense, which I feel is in a lot of women out there's defense, is, well, we got to pay bills. This is a career. I'm a career woman and this and that. So, but I would like to say, hey fam, we're here to encourage each other to be married to the vision of the women that God wants us to be. And so this is where we're going to have to make some tough decisions because we have to balance both. We have to balance both. So eventually, I had to choose the amount of time I spent in the salon, and I actually had to be okay with someone else running things for me while I was not there. And I also had to resolve within myself that whenever the business has issues, I would handle those issues as they arose. So I educated myself a little bit more in management, how to manage better, how to hire better, how to set systems in place. So that way I could still have the income coming in from my business and I could still be home too with my children and my husband, having that, family time and that family unit. So then the next thing is, what are your boundaries, like work-life boundaries? We can't completely leave the family alone. We still have to come home and cook. If we don't want to cook, we have to hire the nannies. We have to hire the cooks. We have to hire the house help that assist us, in doing what we want to do. Some of us have husbands that don't want to eat meals that are prepared by someone else. So every situation is unique to everybody. At the end of the day, if you watched my podcast last week, at the end of the day, we want to contribute to the family unit, to the income of the household. But it is something that is unique to each couple, right? Every couple is not the same. Perhaps in one couple, the husband's income is a lot more than the woman's income. So when she works, it is out of choice, for example. So if income is really in there, there's really no reason really as, as a woman to be away from the home, when the money is there. Because then, hey, let's devote some of that time into being present as a wife, being present as a mom, right? This is where we have to utilize our support systems, the nannies, the family, the grandma, right? The cooks, whatever it is that our finances allow us to do, right? So this is just so this was just one example if you happen to be an entrepreneur that goes out of the home to work. Then maybe you're an entrepreneur or you have a remote job where you work within the home, right? And you're privileged enough not to have to leave the house. But even though you're not leaving the house, you still have responsibilities within the home. So you still have to, perhaps if you have younger kids, secure daycare and stuff like that. So this is where budgeting comes into play. And then you have to see, does it make sense for you to have a live-in nanny? Does it make sense for you to have, outside childcare? Because we need these support systems to make sure we handle the things that we are handling. Right? And then the other scenario is, you have a shift. Perhaps you're a nurse. Maybe, you work in the morning shift, which is usually 7 to 3 or 3 to 11 or 11 to 7. Family, we have to pick our times based on our families first, and then based on what the work wants second. Whatever we do ultimately is for our family. So we want to present ourselves in the home first and foremost, and then outside of the home. A lot of times, women are having these conflicts with their partners when they end up being the breadwinner, right? So they're the breadwinner, we're the breadwinner, she's the breadwinner, and she's making more than her husband, right? So she might justify being outside the home a lot more or a lot longer than the husband. Again, this is something where you have to sit down with your partner and have an agreement. You have to agree. Don't take that on and say, hey, well, you're not working, so because you're not working, I have to do this. Let there be some type of consensus. At least let a conversation be had where both of you are now in agreement. Because if you're not in agreement, this is where the enemy comes in and he breaks the relationship. Because money, careers are a big deal when we're having a partner. So ultimately, the best thing to do is to communicate. Communicate with your partner. Make sure you're on the same page. Be friends. If you have a friend, you're going to want to talk to your friend and find out your friend's opinion about this thing that you're wanting to do. We hear about the Proverbs 31 woman. This woman, to me, I keep saying it, was like an overachiever in everything she could do. She was waking up early. She's the last to sleep. She, manages her household help, well and meticulously. And she goes out and she does business and she's known in the community. I mean, hey, this is what we want to aspire to be. But we're not going to be killing ourselves, right? Like, let's handle what we can. Let's put on our plates what we can handle. Let's not try and do things because our friends are doing it, so we want to compete or we want to do what they're doing. Well, maybe our abilities are different from their abilities, right? So also assessing yourself and knowing your own strengths gives you that ability to know, okay, this is something I can take on. Okay, this is not something I can, take on. Then last but not least, right, because we're encouraging each other to be women that God wants us to be, on this topic of being a virtuous woman, I encourage us to seek out businesses that we can do at home. There's this book that I read that I think is absolutely amazing, and it's called The 4-Hour Work Week, right? And what they do in this book, they outline how you can set up a business pretty much and, set systems in place where eventually you're only working 4 hours in a week. right? I think we've grown up, the traditional way. You go to school, you go to college. After you go to college, you get a job, you get married, you buy a house, you have kids and stuff like that. It's always good as women to educate ourselves and read books, about business and, stuff like that, about how we can get creative and resourceful on ways of bringing income into the home. Yes, typically, it's a man's job to go out and work, but it would be absolutely amazing if we can, tap into the grace that virtuous woman has, and then we're having like a side hustle, that we do from home that is bringing in money. Then this helps to keep the family unit solid, right? Fam, let's find ways of bringing in money. Let's find ways of hustling and, contributing to the main hustle that he's bringing in. I think in this generation, men are looking for helpers. Men are looking for, partners that they can do life together. We're not really living in that generation where, men are looking for housewives to just cook and clean. While that is good, if you're doing it, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. What I'm saying is, since you're already home, take it a step further, right? And have a hustle, some side hustle money where you're not just asking for money for this and that. Sometimes you surprise them. Hey, honey, look, we needed to change this, and I've, saved up some money for this and this. Let's do it together. So family, this is all I have for you today. I will see you again next